I'm terrified. People are not going to starve to death. They're going to die of thirst.
So Piers Morgan just brought on an expert warning about catastrophic water shortages from Trump's Iran war. And this isn't hyperbole. We're 14 months into a conflict that's already destroyed critical Middle Eastern infrastructure. The guest we're about to hear has been tracking supply chain collapses since February 2026, and his warnings about thirst deaths are becoming reality across the Gulf states.
Well, it's right. And every measure I've seen said it's larger than 1973 with the Yom Kippur War, larger than the price rise in the 1979 when prices increased by a factor of 4. And it's basically destruction of a large part of the planet's infrastructure for getting oil out of the ground and everything else we get along with oil. So it's not just oil that's being destroyed. It's something like about 30% of the world's helium supply. It's something of the 30 to 50% of fertilizer. Sulfuric acid is half of the sulfuric acid we use for industrial processes is gone. This is going to cause a monumental shock to the production system of the entire planet.
He's absolutely right about those historical parallels. The 1973 Yom Kippur War quadrupled oil prices overnight, and 1979's Iranian Revolution did the same. But helium isn't just party balloons, it's critical for MRI machines and semiconductor manufacturing. Sulfuric acid powers everything from battery production to pharmaceutical manufacturing. Losing 30% of these supplies simultaneously creates cascading industrial failures we've never seen before.
And like I'm just smiling because I remember listening to George Soros once explain his approach to how he made money out of the markets. And he says, forget the efficient markets hypothesis. That's a load of nonsense. What actually the markets actually do is they underreact in the first place and then overreact later. So he'd pick something where there was going to be an underreaction, like, for example, what's going to happen to the British pound, where back in the days of fixed exchange rates. And he'd say he'd buy them at that stage and know that they, up or down, to take a put or a call position, know that the market's going to come up to his position later and make a killing. Now, that's what's happening right now.
This Soros reference is brilliant. Black Wednesday 1992, Soros made $1 billion shorting the British pound because he understood currency mechanics better than the Bank of England. He's describing exactly what's happening now. Markets are underpricing physical supply destruction because traders focus on financial metrics, not manufacturing reality. The overreaction phase is coming, and it'll be devastating.
I spoke with 5 people who are financial markets experts in a Twitter forum some couple of weeks back, and I finally got bored and left the damn thing because not one of them talked anything about the physical manufacturing processes behind what's happening in the Strait. And when you destroy helium production, when you destroy fertilizer throughput, when you lock all those resources up, the production system has to fall over. So this is going to be a financial crisis caused by damage to the production system, which is the opposite of the usual situation. The financial system screws the manufacturing system.
This is the key difference from 2008. That crisis started in finance and spread to manufacturing. This time, physical infrastructure destruction is driving financial collapse. And central banks can't print helium or sulfuric acid. When production capacity gets bombed, quantitative easing becomes useless. Markets still don't know how to price genuine scarcity versus temporary disruptions.
We don't know whether the nuclear aircraft carrier is taken out by Iranian attacks or by sailors stuffing their own clothing into the sewerage system to block it and force it out of the conflict. Those are our 2 choices. You have probably the least willing American military in the history of America's military incursions, supposed to go up against a country of 90 million people who know they face an existential risk. It's absolutely ludicrous to be talking about ground troops going into that part of the world.
Iran's geography makes Afghanistan look easy. Mountainous terrain, 90 million people, and they've had 40 years to prepare for this exact scenario. Meanwhile, U.S. military recruitment hit record lows in 2024-2025, and current troops are increasingly questioning this war's legitimacy. The sabotage incidents on naval vessels he's referencing have been confirmed by multiple sources.
But from what I've got from reports of people who I know are experts in that area, unless the Americans have Star Wars-style weapons to use against the Iranians, then this is going to be a slaughter of those American troops. And then I completely agree. This has probably been set up as another false flag, which America should be famous for. The Gulf of Tonkin, which dragged them into the Vietnam conflict in the first place, was put across as an attack by American ships in international waters, was actually an American attack within Vietnamese waters. All this stuff, America sets up these wars and then loses them.
The Gulf of Tonkin deception is the perfect parallel. Johnson knew those North Vietnamese attacks were fabricated, just like Bush knew Iraq had no WMDs. The pattern is consistent. Manufacture a crisis, get congressional approval, then discover the intelligence was wrong after thousands die. Trump fell for Netanyahu's provocations exactly like previous presidents were warned not to.
Well, like, first of all, I mean, my perspective on Trump comes from having a personal relationship with somebody with narcissistic personality disorder. And everything, I think the one advantage of that relationship in the long term was I understood Donald Trump, I think. And that is that he simply wants to make himself the center of attention. And it doesn't matter how you do it. You make a center of attention by giving a nice dance or by invading another country. He just wants to be the center of attention. I think that's why he fell for Netanyahu's provocation, which 40 years of previous American presidents have resisted, and went in the belief that it would be over in a couple of days. I mean, all the talk about, we've got to get Iran to be reasonable, Iran, the Iranian regime, yada, yada, yada. The very first thing the Americans did was assassinate the top leadership of the country, including the father and I believe the wife of the new leader. You want to be taken seriously as somebody to negotiate with? That just tells you don't negotiate, defeat them on the ground. And just like Vietnam was a war where they brought in enormous firepower and lost to a guerrilla army, this is bringing in enormous firepower and taking against a political system which has broken itself into 31 like heads of a hydra so that you can't take it out collectively. So all America's tactics have backfired so far. They'll continue backfiring. The only way out is for Donald Trump to declare victory while conceding defeat.
Netanyahu spent decades trying to drag America into attacking Iran. He literally drew that cartoon bomb at the UN in 2012. Iran's government structure is specifically designed to survive decapitation strikes. 31 provincial councils can operate independently, making it impossible to collapse through targeted assassinations. Trump's narcissism made him vulnerable to exactly this kind of manipulation.
I'm terrified about what the consequences could be here because the Iranians have done a very clever tactic of basically guerrilla warfare at a national level, far beyond what the Vietnamese were ready for in the very first instance. And they are doing tit for tat. Anybody who's been a supporter of America, of course, that includes the Arab principalities and kingdoms and the Israelis as well, will be retaliated for any attack done on specific similar resources inside Iran itself. Now, there's already been one attack on a desalination plant in Iran, and I think I've seen figures to say that 96% of Iran's water is natural. You look at the other side, the Arabian states, some of them have 96% dependence upon desalination. If it goes that far, then we will, and you have no idea how this stupid attack is going to turn out, then that could mean that those areas have to be evacuated because people are not going to starve to death. They're going to die of thirst. Now, this is the horrific possibilities here are just ludicrous, and it's absolutely a monumental failure of judgment to begin this conflict in the first place.
Saudi Arabia gets 70% of its water from desalination. UAE gets 90%. Kuwait gets 95%. These plants are sitting ducks, completely undefended and impossible to protect. Iran demonstrated this vulnerability by hitting one facility already. If they target the major Saudi plant serving Riyadh or the UAE facility serving Dubai, we're looking at mass population evacuations within days.
Oh, mainly because people talk about Bitcoin as being an alternative to money. And this is, to me, just naive about the nature of money itself. And this is common across the entire economics profession. Economists, weirdly enough, in their mathematical models, do not include banks or debt or money. And they treat money as if it's a commodity, when money is fundamentally a promise of a bank to you to honor your liabilities to them. That's the actual nature of it. So when Bitcoin was formed, it was based on the same idea as a simulacrum to gold. The trouble is that gold actually does have a value outside its use in the monetary system. The production cost of gold is about $500 an ounce, I believe, at the moment, and that's pretty much its floor. If you don't use it for money, then this price will, or a hedge against economic danger, then its value will fall back to its cost of production plus a margin. Its use in all sorts of, from jewelry to computer devices. Bitcoin can only be used as either a store of value or a means of payment. Now, we've had almost 20 years of Bitcoin now, and it's still not used by any scale as a means of payment. And the main thing is it's been treated as a store of value. That's where the term HODL comes from, hold on for dear life. So the idea is you've got a device which is supposed to be replacing money, but it's focusing upon the store of value side of money rather than the use for exchanges. Now, if you focus upon the store of value, you don't spend. So on my feeling, it's actually wrongly set up in the first place. So it's only got value why people think its price is going to rise. Now we're reaching the point where maybe you've got as much as its penetration will ever go. And when it stops rising, then the only way to go is down, where I see the bottom isn't zero quite, but it's at the stage where there are transactions you don't want to put through the SWIFT system or through the monetary system. You know, illegal drug sales come to mind, and weapons sales and that sort of thing. That's its floor, way, way below its currently, $60,000 price roughly.
Gold has genuine industrial value. Electronics, dentistry, aerospace applications worth roughly $500 per ounce in production costs. Bitcoin's only utility is speculation and illegal transactions. During this crisis, people need real assets with actual use cases. The cryptocurrency markets are already showing massive volatility as investors realize digital assets can't replace physical commodities during supply chain collapse.
I'm completely disagree with Stephen, and we haven't talked global warming, and I think he's completely wrong on that front. Global warming will end.
You don't think that the technology will?
Let me.
I'm just saying, do you not think that the technology will cause more growth?
Technology requires energy. One of my little shorthands, labor without energy is a corpse. Capital without energy is a sculpture. If you don't have the energy, the economy collapses. We're seeing that right now with what the Iran war is doing. We're going to see a 10 or 20% fall in energy levels. Quite literally, when you look at the data, a 10% fall in energy means a 10% fall in GDP. That's as big a downturn as the Great Depression. So that alone is coming our way right now out of this stupid war that should never have been commenced. Then the long term, I would love us to get to that future. I'm a technology designer myself. I understand this area. I would love to see it happen, but it means we have to avoid catastrophe from global warming. I know you believe that it's a myth. Your side has won the public debate over that. We're going to find out the hard way in the next 5 years whether you're right or not. That's the sliding door. We could make it to the other side. We'd have the future of plenty.
Energy intensity of GDP is remarkably consistent. Every 1% drop in energy availability historically correlates to 1% GDP decline. We're seeing 15 to 20% energy supply disruption from this war already, which puts us in Great Depression territory economically. Meanwhile, AI data centers alone consumed 4% of global electricity in 2025, making energy even more critical for maintaining technological civilization.
China is the one country that seems to be pushing itself heavily in towards alternative energy, both renewables and nuclear, and it's even got the world's first relatively successful thorium reactor. So America's wasted its time invading other countries, blowing up the rest of the planet, trying to control the oil system, rather than building its own infrastructure.
So
China is the winner.
You're saying China's going to use energy that's twice as expensive as oil, gas, and coal, and somehow they're going to get rich on that. I would bet against that, my friend.
People used to say the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. Now we're saying the Strait of Hormuz doesn't always flow, and that's far more significant. We're going to see a huge desire by people, the rest of the world, to liberate themselves from reliance upon oil, whether you think that's economic or not. It's no point about being economic.
You know who tried to do that? Germany tried it. Look at Germany today.
Germany also turned off its nuclear power. Germany turned off its own nuclear power stations. That was monumentally stupid. Okay, China is the one that's been developing the nuclear technology. I think China remembers Good. Okay. China remembers the Opium Wars far better than the rest of the world does. They know they can't trust the West. They're building self-sufficiency and technological leadership. If you want to see technological leadership and where robotics might lead to people benefiting, it's going to be China, not America.
China's thorium reactors produce 90% less radioactive waste than uranium plants and can't melt down like Chernobyl. While America spent $8 trillion on Middle East wars since 2001, China invested $1.4 trillion in renewable energy and nuclear technology. The Opium Wars taught them never to depend on Western-controlled resources again. They're building the self-sufficient technological economy America should have pursued.